Today, we're diving into the life of Polycarp, one of the most important figures in the early Christian church. His story is just incredible. It's one of deep conviction, of leadership, and it all ends with a dramatic public execution that would echo for centuries. So let's get into it.
You know, at the very heart of Polycarp's story, there's this central puzzle. How could someone face such a brutal death with just unwavering belief? It's the kind of story that really makes you stop and think about what principles are worth everything.
And that's the big question, right? It's a pretty shocking end for a man who spent his entire life building communities, not fighting empires. So how did he end up on this collision course with Rome? Well, to get that, you first have to understand the world he was living in.
So check this out. Polycarp's life stretched across the reigns of three really different Roman emperors. He becomes a Christian under Trajan, he rises to become a bishop during the pretty stable reign of Antoninus Pius, and then he meets his end under the persecutions of Marcus Aurelius. This timeline is absolutely key because it shows you just how much the political ground was shifting right under his feet.
But, okay, before we get to that fiery ending, there was a long and really influential career. Let's back up and take a look at how Polycarp became one of the most important leaders in the entire early church.
Look, we don't have a ton of details about his early years, but we know he was born around 69 AD in Samos, Greece. He converted to Christianity when Emperor Trajan was in charge. And that's a super important time, because this new faith was just starting to figure out its place in the massive Roman Empire.
And clearly, the guy had some serious leadership chops. During the reign of Antoninus Pius, he's appointed Bishop of Smyrna. That's modern-day Izmir in Turkey. Now, this wasn't just some religious title. It made him the leader of a major community in a busy Roman city. That's a position with a lot of authority, but also a ton of risk.
So how'd he do it? I mean, in a world without email or social media, Polycarp was basically a master networker. He wrote letters, what they called epistles, to these small, scattered churches all over the region. And through these letters, he'd give guidance, he'd help settle arguments, and he'd basically weave this loose collection of believers into something much, much stronger. Right, so what was in these letters? I mean, what were the core ideas that he was so passionate about, he was literally willing to die for them? Let's take a look at the pillars of his teaching.
You could really boil his main contributions down to three big things. First, Christology, his teachings about the nature of Christ. He was a fierce defender of the idea that Jesus was both fully human and divine. Second, eschatology, his beliefs about the end times. And third, his really practical ideas on church government. He argued for a clear, organized structure to guide the faith as it grew.
Okay, let's just hit pause on that second word for a second, because it's so important. Eschatology. It's the part of theology that deals with the end things. You know, death, judgment, the final destiny of humanity. Polycarp was rock solid in his belief that there was a future judgment day where everyone would have to answer for their actions. And that belief changed everything for him.
And the incredible thing is, we know all this because some of his actual writings survived. His letter to the Philippians is like a time capsule for historians. It gives us this direct window into the beliefs and the real-world problems of a Christian community way back in the 2nd century. It's one of the main reasons we know so much about him. So, how does all of this, the letters, the teachings, lead to that final fiery showdown? Well, his total, unwavering commitment to these beliefs was about to put him on a direct collision course with Roman power. Under Emperor Marcus Aurelius, things got tense. The whole political climate just shifted. Persecution against Christians started flaring up in Smyrna. See, to the Romans, when these Christians refused to worship the Roman gods, it wasn't just weird. It was seen as a kind of atheism, even treason. It was a dangerous threat to the stability of the empire.
And as the most well-known Christian leader in the city, Polycarp became a target. The story goes that he was arrested and taken straight to the public stadium. This was the center of Roman life, and on this day, it was about to become the stage for his trial.
The sentence was read out for everyone to hear: execution by being burned alive at the stake. It was a brutal, public death designed to send a message. But it's what he does in this moment, his absolute steadfastness, that turned his execution into a powerful, unforgettable statement of faith.
But here's the thing. The story doesn't end in those flames. No way. In a lot of ways, that's where his real, lasting impact begins. Let's take a look at the legacy he left behind.
Polycarp's impact really goes in two directions.
On the one hand, you have his theological legacy. He's considered one of the early church fathers who helped define core Christian beliefs for generations. But then you also have his structural legacy, his push for a clear, organized hierarchy to keep the church stable and, most importantly, unified.
But if you had to boil it all down, all of his work, his life, into one single idea, it would be unity. For Polycarp, this wasn't just some nice thought. He passionately believed that for the early church to survive in a hostile empire, believers had to be united under one common faith and one common practice.
And that vision had a real, concrete, long-lasting impact. His ideas about how a church should be run, with bishops having authority over specific regions called bishoprics, became a foundational principle. It was especially crucial for the Eastern Orthodox tradition, which, of course, continues to this day.
And that kind of brings us full circle, back to today. Polycarp's life was this powerful testament to conviction and a call for coming together in a fractured world. So, when we look at our own divided times, it's worth asking, right? What can we learn from a nearly 2,000-year-old message about the power of unity?